Welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is the Questionable Garage. And right next to me is our drag racing Lexus that it managed to win its first challenge. When we got a hold of it, we built it. We've set down a really fast test pass. We won our first head-to-head race and then we hurt the motor. So we need to pull these valve covers real quick while they're trying to troubleshoot over there. The guys from PFI Speed, Brent and Jamie, they decided rather than best 2 out of 3, they were gonna try to beat our 9.8 second qualifying time, and they blew up. So everyone blew up their engines. Not how we wanted it to go, but now we have an amazing race car that just needs an engine fixed. So that's what we're gonna work on today. But before we get too deep into this, I wanna go ahead and thank all of you for your feedback. Our last video where we were looking over the damage of Roadblock, the El Camino, our really cool Dodge Charger that's been converted to a Ute that was in a movie that was on Roadkill. It's done a whole lot of cool, exciting things, and it's been frustrating. The thing fights a ton, but obviously with all of your comments, you agree with me that I think 99% of you, option 3, we're gonna pull it back, we're gonna get a new panel down, and thank you to the many of you that have emailed me. I've still got to get back in touch with all of you, and thank you. We've got someone to run that panel down for us when it is built. So again, you guys are awesome. I am so excited to be able to kind of share our projects and have such a really great community with positivity and willingness to help, because that's really just the game of it. Being a good person, doing everything you can to make the world a better place, and something as simple as just helping someone get a big piece of fiberglass down from the northeastern part of the States, it meant the world to me, and awesome. Thank you guys. And yeah, so Roadblock will be coming up in a couple weeks where we're gonna be able to get him fixed. We've got to find out what's blown up in this. That's the big scary thing, because it started making really bad noises, and I'll show you in a little bit. I did a little bit of investigative work off camera, and that's not revealed anything good. And I'll tell you what, it is a little disappointing because I took a whole lot of time. We made sure we put the best parts we could in this thing, and I put the best fuel in it. I had the best oil in it. I put the best of everything in this engine, and that kind of reminds me of something. We all are very particular about making sure we pick the best for our cars, but when it comes to putting the best in us, we kind of cut it short and sometimes go cheap. But I got good news. Today's sponsor, HelloFresh, is gonna help you put the best ingredients in your body and not break your bank. You probably already have an app on your phone that makes food show up to your house. But what if you could spend a little bit of time each evening, make something fresh yourself in your own kitchen, and save 25%? That's the beauty of HelloFresh. Just like you constantly pick the best for your car, you should pick the best for yourself. And it's comforting to know you always get top quality with HelloFresh. Ingredients travel from the farm to you in less than 7 days. That's almost as fast as you're driving. With HelloFresh, eating well in the new year can be stress-free and delicious. With over 35 weekly recipes, they have the options you're looking for to help you achieve your goals. Choose calorie-smart and carb-smart recipes, or even customize select meals by swapping proteins or sides, upgrading your proteins, or adding protein to a veggie dish. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code QuestionableGarage21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. With my incredibly busy work schedule and my wife's even more insane work schedule, it's hard to get to the grocery store and take the time to make a complete meal from scratch. With HelloFresh, we get fresh ingredients delivered to our door with recipes and instructions so clear even I can't mess it up. And they taste fantastic. Even though they're 25% cheaper than your average takeout dinner, you're not discounting any of the flavor. Again, head to HelloFresh.com, use code QuestionableGarage21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. So this turbo is going to need a whole lot of flushing. Just if the filter had that much metal in it. You know, our poor Spula boy, he got that kind of metal too. Oh, good thing it's light. Because when you don't have all the answers, you got to try to come up with them while you go, right? And sometimes you never do get all the answers. You just have to accept. Oh. So our belt throwing problem was this plate flexing. So we're going to try to build some reinforcements on it. By we, I mean Randy was like, hey, when you take it apart, bring it back over to me. Let me come up with a solution. So what I do need to do is trace out things he can't really bolt onto. It would be cool, like a little 90-degree Sharpie. Those things exist. I think we're turning off the camera and going up. And then turning the camera back on. And then we're going to do some more work. And then we're going to turn the camera back off. And then we're going to turn it back on. And then we're going to have an engine on the table, or on a stand, and I'm going to start crying when I see how much is blown up. I got the whole trans pulled and supported. I actually ended up leaving it in the car. I've got to wait under it. Once I get the engine out, I'm just going to throw a bolt to the mid plate and it should stay. Also, I don't know why. I just like instinctively grabbed my strap that I use for like the big block instead of my LS motor plate, you know, or like center plate. So hopefully this works out okay. Committed myself all the way to one thing, and then, you know, rather than just doing a little bit of work to change it out and pulling the center plate and putting the traditional pulling method on, I decided to soldier ahead. We're going to see how that plays out for me here in a minute. If you're watching this part, you have an idea why we toasted and have a ton of metal in the bottom end, comment. Tell me what you think. I have ideas. Oh, we're free of the mid plate. Self-removing engines. You know, really good at scaring you as they're just suddenly making incredibly loud noises. I just have to remember to use the right tool when I put, back together. But that's going to be probably just far enough away that I'll forget. Put it in with this and just have to fight it. Ow! Alright, free of the tranny. So now, should just be, come on out. And despite thinking I had everything drained, it's like, no you don't. You know what I'm realizing? I mean, granted, it's a motor plate car. Normally you run a ground wire, even on a motor plate car. Just something from the heads down, because you coil ground and you're relying on the engine to ground through the head studs to the block, to the motor plate, to the chassis. So it's not necessarily wrong, but I definitely would never have wired it that way. I'm a big fan of making sure your electricity can flow as easily as possible, because you can have so many problems in a race car from electrons not quite doing what they're supposed to do. Well, all right, we got the engine on the stand. We're going to go ahead and yank our manifolds off. We'll get the front plate off. And then I'll actually go ahead and drop the oil pan still full of oil. But we're gonna make the best of it. We're gonna find out why this motor blew up. Maybe. Maybe we take it apart and we're left with more questions. One thing I do notice is we don't have a lot of metal. That copper that was getting caught in the filter was not coming up into the head. I'd like to say it was all because I was super quick and, you know, smart and didn't run it while it was coming apart. I'd like to say it. I don't know if that's why. Maybe we'll find out here once we figure out what bearing went. One reason I'm not going to go ahead and pull the heads before the oil pan is the water that's left. I can pull the block drains and things like that. You always risk adding more water. We're wanting to minimize the potential for contamination. And, you know, dumping a bunch of water in. It's one surefire way to contaminate it, right? So we're not going to do that. One thing I'm noting is a lot of fuel in the exhaust. And then one of the other things I found is the main coil pack grounds that were on the cylinder heads were actually just finger tight. There wasn't a whole lot of torque to them. So we could have been having some weird coil contact, not getting a complete spark. That's why whenever I'm doing, I'm so almost annoyingly particular. Like I'll be working on something, tightening it, and someone will be like, hey, can I get a quick hand? And I won't stop until the bolt I started putting in is tight. Because it's pretty easy to just, you get busy. You run over, you help someone real quick, you forget what you were doing, and you don't get that bolt tight, and then it creates big problems later. Yeah. Well, at least the easy to get to bolts are nice and tight. You guys are in the market for a chair. You really, I'm not gonna claim they're cheap. They don't claim they're cheap, but man, they're good. I love my Viper chairs. If anything, my only complaint is if you're working on a clean floor, they roll almost too good. You just kind of start skiing away from what you're trying to work on. All right, O-ring, let go. Something fun I'm noticing too is my timing pointer is all kinds of bent and messed up. Likely from when it decided to eject its first drive belt. So, I've got an Earl's Flex Seal on the oil drain, and she's a wiggler. Now we can drop that oil pan. Well, that's not working. There, that's a little better. Not everything needs to be a big challenge. Oh, yep, she's heavy. Hit. Oh, she's a sparkles. All right, I'm gonna move this and we'll reposition you guys so we can roll the engine and start trying to come up with why? What happened? What blew it up? All right, we got you close, so we will start with pulling the windage tray and the oil pickup just to get an idea of what we got going on inside. One thing I did notice is there's a little bit of like cloth, a very small amount on the pickup. I'm not sure where that's come from. That's not a super good sign. Just a little more of that. What is, there's not tons and tons of this stuff, but there is some in there, which there shouldn't be anything because she was fully cleaned. Just a little bit, there's a tiny bit of silicone. We got some bearing metal. There we go. Woo. All right, so definitely not a loose pickup there. Now, one thing that's tricky is while oil pressure was functioning, it was great. Well, you know, before we lost all our sensors from the wiring mishap, oil pressure was never even a question until it left. And this will let us start to see our bearing caps, which will begin to tell us a lot more about the picture of everything. Okay, that O-ring had a good tight seal. No obvious holes. It's definitely dirty, but she did have blowed up engine oil hanging out. We're just looking for anything just that stands out super obviously wrong. We've got, again, just this is more bearing material, silver, not the copper. So next we will start looking at rod caps. Which one of these might tell a story? Starting here in the back. Those aren't obviously loose or doing anything weird. All right, what's gonna be our next? Still making good compression. Those are tight, nothing really. You have the little front. Oh, I can start to see it. Can you guys see it? We got some color. Let me turn this towards you. Can you see it yet? I can't quite tell. There's a lot of sensor information. So now we can check this pair. That's good. That's good. But if you look through here, there's a lot of blue. My guess is, can you see? So why do we have blue there? Now, we knew these pistons, when we put it together, they were used, lost a cam bearing, they banged up. So, like looking through, I can see the banged up pistons and everything. There's nothing really there that makes me go, oh man, that's a big problem. And everything else from the bottom looks good. But number one, how's the oil flow through here again? Picks up, discharges through here, comes out to the filter, comes back into the block. I believe pressurizes, runs through here, filter, back into the block. You have that barbell, and then it pressures, goes forward or back to front. So what that's saying, we'll pull the heads. If everything, like it starts getting worse as we go forward, that's gonna be indicative of likely oil starvation, I think. We got the heads off. I went ahead and pulled the cam. Cam bearings themselves look pretty good, especially for an LS. And I did make the confirmation of what my memory was. The oil comes off the pump, it runs down, comes out this hole, goes the filter, back in, and then, again, why people complain about the LSs, you know, they call them cam priority, but it goes up and runs down basically the passage with the cam bearings, and then there's a hole near each cam bearing that feeds the mains, and the main also has a hole, they're gun drilled in the crankshaft, and sends the oil to the connecting rods. So it goes back to front, and if you lose a cam bearing, it leaks the oil pressure, and that's why you'll lose bottom end bearings, or basically if anything goes wrong in any of those passages. Let's see how 7 and 8 are looking, and we'll kind of work our way forward. And then if it's oil starvation, I have my theory as to why we had it. We're kind of beyond trying these rods again. They've gone through multiple engine failures, and one is definitely heated. Just in the theme of how things have been going, my Milwaukee, suddenly the switch don't work. And I have to check the serial number. I remember watching on the torque test channel that Milwaukee had a issue with some of them and actually was doing like a recall of sorts where you can get either a whole new gun or a new switch set up. I don't remember exactly. So never do this again. I'm accepting these are done. So we can be a little more aggressive. So let's look at 7 and 8 bearings. And so one way you kind of can read a bearing. Generally, if your top side bearing is heavily damaged, there we go, your top side bearing, that is going to be from tune, detonation, it slamming down. And if your bottom side is tore up, mostly that's, you know, you're going to read more oiling on the bottom. And if we look, that's actually fairly consistent. It's got more wear than an engine with a mile should have, which is kind of an indicator. And honestly, 7 looks the exact same way. There's nothing that makes me go, oh my goodness, this is definitely a huge problem. All right, rotate to the next pair. If you're taking it apart with the intent that they're gonna get reused, I'm just kind of defeated and knowing I don't plan to put it back together with these parts. So we're getting a little rough. You can already see that you're getting bounced around. My hammer's falling. We can see more wear in this bearing. There's more of these lines, more of that top material knocked out of it. How does our next friend look like? Yep, same thing. We can see even without wiping it, we're losing more material as we're going forward, which means I'm pretty sure she got a little starved for oil. Seeing we're getting shinier, but then there's also that darker, duller material coming through, which is just, again, we're gonna see this next pair is gonna look even worse. And then our final pair should look the absolute worst. Do we see any copper yet? Or not until the final pair? What do you guys think? Are we striking copper or gold or maybe not yet? It's really rough when you don't have all the data you really need to be 100% about something. Because when it comes time to rebuild an engine, it's like, all right, what can I safely reuse? What blew up? What caused this failure? And if I put the wrong parts back in, will it fail again? So it's really important to try to do your best when you're doing your diagnosis. Okay, it blew up. Why? What went so wrong that it blew up? What's really interesting is the fact we lost just one. Usually you'll see more. You know, we're building suspense. Storytelling. That's why we didn't pull the other one yet. So, man, I'm gonna be honest. I was expecting a lot worse. Now, maybe because I was so on the spot with shutting it down. All right. Now the big reveal. There's really no bearing left as much as that's spinning around. So there you go. There is all of our foreign metal from this bearing, and it lost the tang and started spinning it and squishing. The fact that it's squishing it. Man, it just turns so nice. You see all the heat that went into this rod. So this rod, minimal is definitely trash. All of the damage to the other bearings is coming from the metal ingestion. But what's interesting, you look, this bearing is squishing one side. And it was spinning around. It's really peculiar to me unless there's a clog, but we clean these. And say it's possible if just that one gun boring wasn't good, but it had, like, we've went through that. All right, well, while I'm muttering aloud about that, we'll pull this main cap and take a quick peeky. So this is just the thought process that you have to go through. Again, we're trying to find out, why did this end up blowing up so quickly? Now, that main does not look bad. Again, most of this, I mean, the filter is doing its best, but trash is still making its way. So this is just a bore cleaning brush. And no, like, okay, so again, we're working through our process. The oil flow of this engine, the oil picks it up via that pickup. There's the O-ring. That O-ring had no problem. Once it pressurizes the oil, it travels down the length of the block, comes out, goes to the filter, comes back in, goes up to the cam bearings, starts in the very back, lubes around the cam bearing, then it goes to the rear main bearing, which feeds the rear cylinder, and then it just slowly works its way forward. Cam bearing, main bearing, rod bearing, cam bearing, main bearing, rod bearing, all the way through. And again, the rods get it, the oil comes in around the main, fills that oil space, and then it goes through this small hole and then comes up to the connecting rod bearing surface. But as you can see, I was thinking maybe it was clogged, but no, because I spent a lot of time cleaning that bore. So why does literally every bearing but one look good? All right, so I have done thinking and theorizing, and this is where I want to try to kind of help you guys work through the thought process you need to have when you're trying to figure out what blew up and why. And I was wrong. It wasn't oil starvation. The more I was thinking about it, and I called a couple friends, just because it didn't make sense. When you have an oil starvation issue, especially in an LS, the bearings are gonna get a lot worse as you go forward. And we just didn't see that. They were fairly consistent going all the way forward until just suddenly number one was wrong. Like obviously number one had failed catastrophically. There is the possibility the connecting rods have a chamfer. They have to go a particular way so they ride good next to each other. And that was correct. I thought, okay, maybe I did a dummy. Rechecked it. That was correct. So, why would only one bearing fail? It is not a normal situation at all, and it really was kind of hard. So you start going through, since we put this engine together, what has happened to it? And you don't always have that answer. Sometimes you didn't just build it and it didn't blow up in less than a mile. You're getting something unusual, so you don't always have the history, but try to put together the most complete history possible. And I started thinking, okay, we built it, sat for a little bit, went ahead and pre-lubed the cylinders, put it in the car, don't have any of those indications. We thrash built it, you know, we were in a hurry, built it real quick on the final wiring to get down for the race. And I don't remember if it made it in, but the only thing that really went wrong in this car's life was one catastrophic misfire. Well, hey, I wanted to actually interrupt myself from the past. In my initial intro, outro, you actually won't see. We're just gonna cut it. I was thinking it was an ignition misfire that caused the damage, but it didn't, just some things didn't feel right, and I was reaching out and talking with a couple other friends that have been tuning forever. Scott Woolworth had the fantastic idea. I actually met him at a Grid Life event at the M1 concourse where I was racing the Lexus ISF, and he was in a cool S2000. And I sent him the pictures, and he immediately fired back, oh, it's hydrolocked. And what hydrolock is, we talked about it in the past where I had the little demonstration with syringes, is when fluid enters the cylinder and it cannot be compressed as easily as air. That it doesn't move, and boom, things bend, get damaged. I found the footage of when I think this damage happened, during a two-step test that David was doing, where it had that hard mechanical bang and stop, and a tremendous amount of black smoke came out of the exhaust. So I was thinking it was a misfire going up. It wasn't. Something happened in the calibration where it got outside of our normal test parameters on two-step, and it just dumped fuel. And since cylinder 1 was coming up, there was nowhere for that fuel to go, and it pancaked our bearing. So again, when we were checking our rotation and showing this damage, it was as the piston and rod was going up. This was our top bearing, fully squished. So our connecting rod visually isn't bent, that I can tell. Maybe in post somehow you'll see there's a bend. I don't see a bend in there, but you can tell that our bearing definitely was slammed violently into the crankshaft. So I was wrong, and I wanted to give the right information in this video so that way you can learn. Again, take all the pieces of information you're able to gather and rely on other people. Not everyone knows everything, and there are smarter people than me, than you, than others out there. But when you work together, you combine all of that knowledge and you come out with the answer. So we now know why my engine only lasted a mile. Bit of a bummer, but we can fix it. Correct the two-step, which it should be because we were two-stepping it afterwards. Find a new crank and rod, or rods, or a whole new block. Who knows on that side? But anyway, I wanted to interject Jared, who had the wrong theory, give you guys the right theory. There's very rare a time where you'll never know the answer why. You're usually almost always able to gather enough information from what you can physically see and from what you can do talking with others to come up with a solution. So it's still blowing up. But anyway, let's go back to the past where you will find me giving you an outro. We got it right. Not really a good situation, but we know what's wrong. We can order some parts. We will get her fixed, and Lazarus will rise once again. Maybe I'll say things are maybe looking a little rocky for Sick, the first Sick adventure, but maybe we'll do something rocky. Maybe we'll do something in the summer. We will try. There's just a lot of money to spend and not a lot of time to get it together. We are going to fight, and we're going to keep doing what we've got to, but that's it. We're going to wrap up today. We now know why we're blown up, but we got to keep a good attitude. It doesn't, lots of bad things are going to happen. You can either be negative about it or you can just smile and keep going forward, because there's enough negative people out there. Just do your best to be one of the positive lights out there. So appreciate you guys always hanging out with me here in the shop while we're making some questionable choices. I hope you guys are learning some along the way and having fun while we're doing it. And I kind of got the outro all out of order, so I'll just end with this pearl of wisdom. Honesty is always the best policy. We'll see you next time.